Hey everyone, welcome to another pre-ab moto. Today we're gonna go over a post-moto mobility. So end of the day, we're done riding, we're heading home, or we're still at the track, then we have another day of riding, or we're gonna go back to work the next day. This is gonna be a good routine for you to do to help the body relax, recover, and get into a more comfortable position after a hard day of riding. First things first, we're gonna get into seated side bends. I'm gonna take a seat on the floor, very simple here. What we're gonna do is we're just gonna plant one hand to the side and we're gonna reach one hand over as we go. We're gonna do about 10 of these on a side. So we're gonna do one side at a time. So I'm gonna go with my right arm first and leave my left hand on the ground while I'm creating this banana shape to my stretch here, really opening up the side body, stretching the lats, stretching obliques, that side rib cage a little bit as well. Hopefully as you go through this and you're getting into the repetitions here, you're gonna feel that opening up more and more. This is a dynamic movement, so we're not holding for a certain amount of time, though you can, if you feel kind of a little bit of a tight spot, you can hold a little bit longer on it, but we wanna be a little bit more dynamic with it, going to about that 10 repetitions. Once we get to 10, other hand goes on the floor, and then we just reach over and get that opposite side. Getting these muscles loosened up after a day of riding is going to be really important because these muscles in the back of the arm, down into the back, definitely get really tight. And if you're a side sleeper, like I am, you can kind of sleep a little bit with one side crunched up and one side open. So this is a really good stretch, just so you're not solidifying a tight muscle on one side and maybe a little bit of a weak muscle on the other side. Great, so about 10 on each side is what we just did there. Nothing too crazy. Like I said, if you feel a little bit extra tight in one spot, you can hold for a little bit longer. Next is going to be rotation, so we're going to stay in this seated position. Next, we're going to stay in the seated position, and we're going to rotate back and forth, alternating our sides. So easy as this, we're going to go opposite hand, opposite knee. So I'm going to go left hand to right knee, sit nice and tall, and I'm going to rotate away. Then I'm going to come back. Now right hand to left knee, sit nice and tall, rotate away. So 10 on each side here, 20 total. This one's pretty self-explanatory on what we're really stretching out here. Midsection, of course, wringing out the core, kind of like a towel. Our thoracic spine, which makes up the 12 vertebrae in the middle of our spine that allows us to twist, gets pretty tight. In between the shoulder blades can get really tight as well. We're using a lot of those muscles throughout the day, so the rhomboids, the traps, and also stratus posterior, which sit all mid-back, about that shoulder blade height, and get pretty tight from work. Even if we're not even riding, those muscles can get tight because we tend to have more of this kyphotic forward bend in our daily lives. So getting nice and tall and rotating and twisting can be a really helpful tool to alleviate some of that tightness that you might experience in that upper back. And it also helps with posture, of course. And whether or not we're talking about a rider or an athlete or just the everyday person, posture is really important. Makes us more comfortable, keeps us out of pain, and it also presents us better, of course. So I'm going to go a couple more. I'm going to call this 19 and 20. Perfect. Once again, another dynamic movement. All of these movements in the beginning here are going to be dynamic, so we're just going to be counting them as repetitions as we go through. Next one is going to come forward onto the hands and knees for a quadruped position. In this quadruped position, we're going to continue to work the thoracic spine, but we're going to do it in a little bit of a way that is going to be more intense. We're going to place one hand behind the head, and then the opposite arm is going to push the floor away. So you're going to see me push that floor away, and then I'm gonna drop down, elbow to wrist, elbow to ceiling. This isn't gonna be that big of motion. I can create it to be bigger if I shift my hips more, but I'm not going to. I'm gonna allow my spine to be the only thing that's moving while that down arm is pressing the floor away. About 6, 7, we're doing 10 on each. 8, 9, and 10. Perfect. So down arm can get a little bit tired. I would be lying if I wasn't feeling that a little bit in that planted arm, kind of like a plank. No harm, no foul there, not a bad thing. So we're gonna go to the other side now, exact same thing. And hopefully with all these dynamic motions, maybe like the first like 4 to 5, feel pretty tight. And then you start to feel them loosening up a little bit as you're going through the reps, which of course is the idea to it. Allow your body to get used to moving differently since it has gotten so used to moving in one way throughout the day, or one way when you're on the bike too. So last one. Awesome. So we're going to stay down for this one. This one is a hip windup. One of my favorite ones. I use this in my warm-ups, my cool-downs, my nightly stretches, everything across the board. So very versatile, really good feeling, another twisting exercise, but we're going to get into the hips as well. So we're going to step 1 foot forward. We're going to go with the right foot forward. We're going to kick that left leg back and lift the knee up off of the floor. It's going to be a nice stretch in the hip flexors and also that inner groin in the front foot. From here, I have my right foot planted, so I'm going to leave my left hand planted. That right arm is going to rotate and reach to the ceiling. Come back down, rotate, reach the ceiling. We're going to go for 10 on each side. So these motions aren't as easy as static stretches, of course. Static stretching, we get to kind of find a comfortable position, get a stretch and hold it, but not a lot of work is being facilitated as we do that. Switch legs. So these dynamic movements tend to be a little bit more exercise-like. You'll probably hear in my voice, I'm working throughout this, so there's a little bit of a change in my tone because of my breathlessness. And we really like these multi-dimensional movements where we're getting different body parts involved more than just one single thing. If we're stretching the hamstrings, stretching the quads. So this is pretty full body demanding right there. Whew. All right, that's a really good one. We're gonna move on to a wide-legged forward fold. So the wide-legged forward fold is going to be exactly what it sounds like. We're going to go wide-legged. So whatever's comfortable for you as an individual is going to be your width. I'm going to go pretty wide personally. And I'm going to forward fold here. Hands may or may not touch the floor. If they don't touch the floor, you can always bring something over to help bring the floor closer to you, called a yoga block, a pad, a pillow. And what we're going to do here is we're going to walk to one side, touch the toes, or come close to the toes. Walk to the other side and rotate back and forth, each one of these being 1 repetition. So since we're doing 10 a side, 20 total reps. And as you're going through it, you're probably going to feel yourself getting a little bit lower, a little bit more loosened up. So you can widen your legs out if you like. Intensify the stretching. Couple more. Coming over on 9 on each side. 10 and 10. Awesome. Coming back down. So those are our first 5 dynamic movements for our post-moto routine here. So we started with our seated side bends, we went to seated rotations, quadruped T-spine rotations, a hip wind up, and then we just finished that with a wide-legged forward fold side to side. All those are 10 on each side, so keeping it pretty simple with the count. If you want to do more, of course, feel free to do more. We're going to move on to a stretching technique that is called PNF, which is peripheral neuromuscular facilitation. But we're going to just keep it PNF because that's a mouthful to say. PNF stretching, what it does is it helps to alleviate some of the tension in the muscles that are being binded together through the 2 filaments, myosin and actin. So by doing this type of stretching, what we're ultimately going to achieve is a lengthening in the tissues because we're going to get those 2 filaments to break off of each other and actually slide and glide as they're intended to do. Sometimes they get a little bit sticky. Of course, we're all familiar with having a knot in the muscle, but that's not like there's actually a tied knot in the muscle. That wouldn't make any sense. What's happening is those 2 filaments are bound and stuck together. So this type of stretching is going to help them unstick from each other and regain the natural length in the tissues. So the first thing is going to be the hamstrings, which hamstrings are a very tight part on the majority of people because even as I'm sitting here, we sit on them all day, so they tend to get a little bit shorter. So this one's really good to do with a band, but you can also do it with a towel if a band is not accessible to you. First thing is whichever side you want to start with, you're going to pick that leg up. And if we're using a towel, we would just have our hands wrapped around it like this and pulling back. I really prefer the band because you can relax and let the band do the work for you. So right now this looks like just a pretty static, normal stretch for the hamstring. The difference is now that I've held this for a little bit and got a little bit of relaxation from it, I'm going to activate my muscles in my hamstring by driving my foot forward for about 4 to 6 seconds. 5, 6, and then I'm going to release. And hopefully you can see in this angle that I'm actually going to gain more mobility and flexibility throughout this, and I'm actually going to scooch myself down because that's going to not be too much of a stretch here in a moment. I'm going to fire off again. 4, 5, 6, and I'm going to release. We're going to do this for 3 times on each side. So as we're going through, gaining more and more length throughout the back of the leg here. Holding for about 10 seconds in between. Fire one more time. 4, 5, and 6. Release. And each time I'm getting a different stretching sensation as I'm going through this because the muscles are starting to relax here, which allows more tension to be alleviated elsewhere. Awesome. So I'm going to switch my feet up here. And remember, like I said, if we have a towel, we're going to use this with the towel, and we would just self-resist. And we're going to push. And release after about 4 to 6 seconds. About 10 seconds between. And we're going to push again. And release. This one's actually releasing a little bit easier for me. Each side is always going to be different. Left and rights are not the same. So one side might feel one way while the other side feels another way. I'm going to go one more time. At this point right now, my right hamstring is feeling better than my left one. I'm able to get a little more relaxation from the back of it. And we're going to come out. Perfect. So that's the first PNF that we're going to do next is going to be 90-90 PNF. So 90-90 simply is just because we're setting ourselves up in a 90-degree angle, 90-degree angle, 90-degree, 90-degree, 90-90. So 90 all the way through here. I'm going to twist my torso to line up with my front femur. I'm going to place one hand on my foot and one hand right off of that front knee. And I'm going to break forward ever so slightly. So similar to a pigeon stretch, if anyone's ever done the pigeon stretch, but we're just doing this in the 90-90 position on the floor. From here, I'm going to now activate and drive my knee into the floor, which is going to activate my glute muscles, which are on the back side here, and activate those very similar to what I was doing with the hamstring, giving resistance. So I'm pushing, 3, 2, 1, relax. And I'm going to break forward just a little bit more. If you start to come down more, you can go all the way down to the elbows if the flexibility is there. If it's also a hard position to be in, the 90-90, you can boost your bottom up with a pad, pillow, yoga block. I'm going to press again. So I'm pushing that knee down and driving it into the floor while I'm doing this. Then I'm going to relax it, and I'm going to break forward a little bit more. We'll go one more time and push. Keep pushing, 2, 1, relax. And break down into it a little bit more. Excellent. So you could switch by simply just swiveling over. I'm going to switch, but I'm going to kind of turn a little bit so you can continue to see me better. So now we have our opposite leg forward, one hand on the foot, one hand on the outside of the knee. I'm going to break forward into that stretch. And then I'm going to fire and push this knee into the ground to activate the glutes on the back side. And then I'm going to relax, break forward just a little bit more of a stretch. Press again. 2, 1, relax. Break down forward more. Always breathing when we're doing these exercises. Never hold your breath when stretching. And one last time, fire it. Push, push, push. 3, 2, 1. Relax and fold. Awesome. So that was the PNF for the 90-90 position, which is going to help release the glute muscles. Next, we're going to move into a Samson stretch, which is also just an anterior front side stretch for the hips, hip flexor, and also the quad. So I like to put my knee on something, just makes it a little more comfortable for me. What I'm going to do here is both hands are going to go up, which elongates the anterior fascial line all the way up my body. And then I'm going to lean forward. And for 5 seconds, I'm going to squeeze this glute back here, which is going to shove and push forward in that leg. So it's going to go 3, 2, 1, and relax that glute. Reach up tall. I'm going to go again. Fire that glute. Push, push, push. And relax. 2 down. Reaching up tall. One more time. Fire the glute, fire the glute. And relax, back off, and just let that stretch happen for just about 10 more seconds. Awesome, easy peasy on that one. We're gonna switch our knees. Tucking the toe in the back or leaving it down is up to your comfort. I prefer to tuck it. So I'm going to reach back up again. Start that stretch. And I'm going to push through that glute and squeeze from the back to push forward and create more of a stretch in the front side of the leg, hip flexor, quad. And I'm going to relax. And one more time, or excuse me, Second time. Push. 2, 1, relax. Big stretch. Reaching up. One more time now. Squeeze the glutes. Pushing forward, and relax. And let that stretch happen. Excellent. So now we've got the Samson stretch, which, like I said, is still just a anterior front side stretch for the leg. We're going to move on to a upper body PNF stretch, which once again, I'm going to use a band, but you could be using a towel that might be wedged in a door, wrap it around the door handle or something like that. Works really well. If you're using a band, you're going to do what's called a dog leash hold, which is where you put your hand in from the bottom and you let that band sit across the top of the hand so that you can keep your hand open throughout the stretch and you're not actually gripping, because gripping activates the musculature up the arm and we want to relax that as much as possible. From there, I'm going to back up. Let that band do its job and pull my arm forward. And if you're using a towel, you would just lean your body weight back even more so to allow that towel to be what's kind of stretching you there. So now I'm going to activate my lats and hold. 3, 2, 1, and release. So when I'm activating my lats, all I'm really doing is scapular depression. So I'm pulling my shoulder blades down, which right now it looks like it's backwards, but it would be down, which is activating the lower trap muscle, along with the lat, the teres, and some other muscles in the back to help to depress that shoulder blade. Kind of like a pull-up, but without the elbow bend. And we'll go one more time. And release. Awesome. Switching hands. So once again, dog leash hold. So we're going over the top of the wrist and we're leaving the hand open throughout the stretch. And the whole thing with the grip, if you sit there and you grip your hand and you squeeze, you're going to feel the musculature in your forearms and also your upper arm contract. So we don't want to be squeezing and contracting those muscles during this stretch. We want to allow them to be getting pulled rather than playing a tug of war with our band or our towel. So I'm going to activate and release. The side's a little bit harder for me to activate. It's not as familiar of a motion on my left side as it is my right side. Left and rights are always going to be different, like I was saying. Pull again. And it's pretty standard for a PNF to be done about 3 to 5 times. You don't want to really exceed the 5 mark though. There's not going to be any more return with it. So when you're going more than 5 times with the activation position, you're more so just going to be wasting your time, a little bit of energy, of course. So 3 to 5 times is going to be plenty. 1 to 2 does have some effect. 3 times is going to be that sweet spot, though. Excellent. So did 3 on each side there. So for the PNF, we did the hamstrings, the 90-90 position, the Samson stretch, which is just the half kneeling overhead stretch that we worked on there. And then we just did our lat stretch as well. So covering 4 different positions to do PNF through. As we go through this, it's going to feel more and more natural for that type of stretching to occur. Most people are familiar with more of the dynamic motions that we started with and even the static. So if PNF is new to you, it will get better. It will become more natural as you go. Give these a try. Use them after a day of riding, after a day of being out and about. You're going to feel pretty good when you head to bed. after doing this routine. Hopefully wake up feeling a little more rejuvenated, a little more recovered, and ready to go for it again the next day. Thanks, everyone.